warriors, it's me with another video. Today's video will be about analyzing your anxiety or your eating disorder anxiety to get to the true cause of it in order to overcome binge eating. I was inspired to make this video because in my last therapy session I was blown away by my therapist because she helped me so much to start overcoming my anxiety and my fears. She made some links for me and she actually analyzed my anxiety to make me understand what is behind all of it. Because your eating disorder anxiety is not your true anxiety. Let me explain. I'm going to give you a few examples of my personal life. I told her that I always start to get anxious when I weigh myself and I see that I haven't lost enough weight that day. And she was like, well, okay, but that's not what your anxiety is about. That's not what all of this is actually about. And I was like, yeah, I've read about that, but like, what do you mean? What is it about then? Because I don't know. And she was like, well, what is really important to you? And I started to answer a few questions that she asked me, but I felt like I wasn't giving the right answers. I just felt that I was just answering her questions, but I felt that, I wasn't hitting the spot, And I was like, please help me because I suck at this. I don't know what I need. And she was like, well, yeah, logical. You aren't taught to know what you need as a child. And she gave me some examples. And I realized, oh, okay, what's really important to me is safety. And she says, yeah, that's normal. That's usually in most people's top 3 of needs, And I was like, okay, I need to feel safe, but what does that have to do with the scale? And what does that have to do with me getting anxious because I haven't lost enough weight? And she was like, well, you explained to me that the last time you got really anxious, it got worse when you were showering. And I was like, yeah, that's true. And I was like, I don't understand where you're going, so please help me. And she was like, okay, I'll help you. So we know that your anxiety stems from way before, from way back. Sorry, there are trains passing by constantly. We live near the train station, so I can't really help it. I'm sorry, I apologize. So she said, we know your anxiety stems from way before, And I was like, what does she mean? What does she mean? And she was like, well, we know that it all has to do something with a certain family member. She did say the name of the family member, but, to protect people's privacy, I'm not going to go into too much details, So I will just say a certain family member. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, well, you once told me that he once dragged you from the toilet while you were sitting on the toilet. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, the toilet is very close to the shower. And she told me that for most people, the toilet is a safe place, a safe haven. And that's why when people get back from vacation, they're like, oh yes, finally I can go to the big toilet in my own home now, because they can go to the big toilet better in their own home because they can completely relax there because they feel safer on the toilet in their own home. Do you know what I mean? So she said the toilet is a safe place for most people, and the toilet is most of the time very close to the shower. And I was like, oh, I see what you mean. And then I made an even more important connection, which was this certain family member also always came in when I was taking a shower. So starting from when I was a kid up to when I was, 22, it went on until I actually left the place I grew up in. So even as a young adult, every time I would go and take a shower, he would suddenly have to go to the toilet. And the thing is, we had 2 toilets where we lived. So he could just go to the other toilet. But he didn't want to do that. Every time I decided to take a shower, suddenly half a minute or a minute later, he was there knocking on the door, asking to come in. And I didn't dare to say that I didn't like that. I was too afraid to tell him, I don't like this. I don't want you to see me naked. I'm not comfortable with it. And I don't feel safe if you come in when I shower. I like my privacy. I was too afraid to tell him that because he used to terrorize us. He never took no for an answer. If any of the other family members, including me, would tell him, hey, I kind of don't like this, we felt like our life was in danger. We were never allowed to set boundaries. So he felt like he was entitled to everything and he was the king in the house and we should just obey and say yes and okay. And if we didn't, there was always the threat of violence. And so I learned as a young child that setting boundaries for yourself is not okay. So I never learned to set boundaries. So I was too afraid to just say to him, I don't like it. If you come into the bathroom when I'm showering, can you please go use the other toilet if I'm showering and you need to go to the toilet? So every time I wanted to take a shower, he needed to go to the toilet by coincidence, and he always came into the bathroom when I was showering, and I didn't feel safe because he also made inappropriate remarks like, oh, you're such a beautiful girl, or you are turning into such a beautiful woman, you have really beautiful breasts. And I was like, this is really inappropriate, don't make the... I felt like it was really not normal, and I felt like he was a predator. I felt like he had urges that weren't normal. Now, I was never sexually abused, but I felt as a kid like the threat was always there. And that's one of the things I went through as a child. So my therapist made the link for me and said, whenever you shower, you get reminded of that time where you weren't safe, and it triggers your anxiety even more. So she said, if you feel anxious, it's probably not a good idea for you to go take a shower at that moment. Just wait to take a shower until you feel more calm. Because if you are already anxious and you go take a shower, it can trigger the urge to binge, just to be able to cope. And I was so blown away. I was like, why did I not see this before? This is so logical. And I will make videos in the future about complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or C-PTSD, because that's what that is. My anxiety is just complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So I might get triggered to become super anxious by the most stupid things, things that are completely normal for other people might freak me the fuck out. And I knew that I had this, but I hadn't made the link with the shower and the toilet yet. So she did that for me, and she said, you should look at your anxiety and look at it more sharply and see where it comes from. And I know it's not always easy to make the link yourself, but that's why you have a therapist, you know. She or he can help you with that. So she told me, look more sharply at your anxiety, and the moment you have found out where the anxiety comes from, you can see it for what it is. For example, safety is really important for me. And my boyfriend and I are in a situation right now where we are struggling financially. Now, this is not our fault, and I'm not going to go too much into detail because then this video will become way too long. But it wasn't our fault. It's not like we got in debt because we just like shopping or something. It's just bad luck, I guess. But we're struggling financially, and we are always stressed because of it. And my therapist said that I can't feel safe in such a situation. And she told me that until this financial crisis has been resolved, I will feel way more anxious on a daily basis than I normally would. And I was like, well, I can't break up with my boyfriend. I love him. What should I do? And she's like, it's okay. It's okay for the situation to stay that way for a while if you can't change anything about it, but you should just look at it the way it is. You should just be like, oh, I am more anxious than usual because I am in this particular situation right now, and that is why I subconsciously don't feel safe. So I know that I might feel more anxious than normal, and I shouldn't use the scale to try and get control over my life, because that's not going to help. It's only going to make matters worse. If I binge in order to try and cope with things, that's not going to make things better either. It's only going to cost money, you know, because binge eating costs a lot of money. It's only going to make me feel worse in the long term, so I don't gain anything out of it. And yeah, she just told me that I should really analyze my anxiety and look at it more sharply. Because she said if you look at it more sharply and you look at it the way it is, you will be able to deal with it better. So that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about today, and I hope this video has helped you in a way. If it did, give it a big thumbs up, and I will see you guys in the next video. Keep fighting, warriors. Bye!